Voice family.
Are you on Getter yet? No?
What are you waiting for?
It's free.
It's uncensored.
And it's where all the biggest voices in conservative media are speaking out.
Download the Getter app right now.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. Our Real America's Voice team is going places others won't.
We need to take cover. That was incoming into Israeli territory.
To show you what they don't want you to see.
It's still a disaster. What's the latest?
They call these street releases. You've got hundreds of people being dropped off. It's getting worse.
We're the nation's fastest growing news program for a reason.
Real journalism.
They're all marching down to the White House.
Sounds to me, Ben, like they won't be happy until Israel doesn't exist.
Real American news.
America is under chemical warfare attack. Fentanyl is the weapon.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
I appreciate you guys very, very much.
This is America's Voice Live with Steve Gruber.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gruber. It is Wednesday, the 12th of March. Let's get to today's top stories. And thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here at Real America's Voice. Greenland held its parliamentary elections on Tuesday, where the two center-right parties pulled off a stunning victory over the other left-wing parties that have governed that island for years. We'll be digging deep into this. It's very important. It's part of the Trump effect. Also, the House of Representatives passed a government funding bill just yesterday to continue to fund government at its current levels. Now it's on to the Senate. Will it make it through before Friday? We'll find out. We'll talk about it, and then later. Young conservative women are pushing back against far-left ideologies and searching for alternative perspectives that align with their values. I'll be discussing all of this and more today, so be sure to stick around here on America's Voice Live. Now, it's all about the economy. You hear Democrats desperately trying to point to the price of eggs 50 days into Donald Trump's presidency as a clear sign of his failure. Or Chuck Schumer blathering on about where is the golden age of America. Oh, Chuck. It's just more evidence of the tone-deaf left that is also claiming that millions of Trump voters are now having buyer's remorse. Well, I can assure you that's flat out false. In fact, the Trump voters I know, by the way, that's a lot, there's not one that I've heard from that is disappointed by the vote they made for Donald Trump or his return to the White House. In fact, folks are getting exactly what they voted for, and they seem pretty happy about it. They're thrilled to see the number of illegal aliens invading our country down to almost zero, 8,300 in February. They are ecstatic when they see Trump go to bat for them and for women in sports and, well, for peace around the world. Which, by the way, it appears that the president has come a lot closer to over the last 24 hours after Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz came out from a closed-door meeting in Saudi Arabia to make this announcement. In case you missed it, here it is from yesterday.
Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. I want to personally we both want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, for hosting us, for making this possible. They've been instrumental in this process, and we're very grateful to them for hosting us here today. And hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians, and we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball is now in their court. And but again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
Look, it's another big win for President Trump and his effort to end the more than 3-year-old war in Ukraine. But, of course, he still needs to get the Russians on board, as you heard there. That's not certain yet. But I would say the sentiment is right that it's not just a matter of when this war is going to end, but how soon it's going to happen. This is a big victory for the president early here in his second term. He promised to deliver peace. And with wins in Gaza and Ukraine, he's not disappointing those he made those promises to. And that, of course, is us, you, and me. Something else that Trump voters really like is his take-no-guff attitude. They like that a lot. And that means leveling the playing field in a variety of areas that he says America has been getting screwed in for a very long time. That includes how much we were previously paying for the World Health Organization, the cost of the Paris Climate Accords, and more recently he pointed again to NATO and the United Nations, where we pay far more than anyone else. We, of course, also picked up the bill for that war in Ukraine these past many years. Which brings me to the tariffs that the president has been dropping on a host of countries, most notably Mexico and Canada, because it's been in the headlines, both of which fought back, at least to begin with. Well, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has already made concessions and lowered the pressure and put those tariffs on hold, at least for a few weeks. Up north, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tried to puff up his chest for a moment, but he backed down. But the Premier of Ontario, Dougie Ford, he's really been feeling his oats lately. He was threatening to first jack up the tariffs on electricity sold to the United States to 25%. Then he said, I'll cut it off altogether. I'll cut off the juice to America altogether, which is weird because we get almost no electricity from Ontario at all. Not in Michigan, not in New York, not from Ontario, the two states he cited as being his targets. President Trump, by the way, didn't bat an eye and said, no problem, Dougie. In 24 hours, we'll raise the price of steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%. Well, it didn't even take 2 hours before old fat Doug realized he didn't have a leg to stand on or a card to play or any electricity to hijack, for that matter. Listen.
As we're duking it out back and forth, China's laughing. They're building an arsenal of critical minerals, and we have to work together. We're the two greatest nations in the world. Let's build that AMCAN fortress. And as for the aluminum and steel, 16% of the aluminum that the U.S. makes is produced in the U.S. The rest, vast majority of it, comes from Quebec, Canada, along with steel. But let's work together. Cooler heads have to prevail here, or we'll decimate both economies, and we're seeing it over the last few days.
Yeah, another big win for President Trump is the fact that the Democrats are running away. New Hampshire Senator Jean Shaheen has announced just today her retirement. Listen to this.
But today, after careful consideration, I'm announcing that I have made the difficult decision not to seek re-election to the Senate in 2026. It's just time.
Oh, it's time, all right. Make no mistake. The Trump effect is very real. That's 3 seats, by the way, that the Democrats are walking away from in the United States Senate. Michigan, Minnesota, now New Hampshire. And why are all the Democrats running away? It's because President Trump is back in charge, and he won't allow them to continue to destroy this country. And they know come election, come midterms, 2026, he's going to win again. You see, I voted for every bit of this. I'm proud of my president right now. I'm grateful for my president, and I support my president because I love a strong America that is not going to play games with foreign adversaries or other countries. No, we simply say, you know what? How about get nothing from Ontario going forward? You know what, Doug Ford? We'll set you down. Nothing at all. How would you like that? And then Doug just folds. So do the Democrat senators. So I think it's important for you to understand the numbers. And because the Democrats are playing some game about Donald Trump wrecking the economy with tariffs, I want you to know exactly how Canada has handled tariffs with us. You want the numbers? Here they are.
Would you believe these insane tariffs that the U.S. is bullying Canada with? 250% for milk, 291% for butter, 208% for whey, 241% for cheese? How could we do this to our neighbor? Oh, wait, those are actually tariffs that Canada imposed on the U.S. last year. Whereas for the same goods, we imposed the following tariffs. 10% for cheese, 10% for butter, 5% for milk, 0% for whey. It's interesting that since Trump announced tariffs, everyone became an econ PhD who's confident that they know exactly what tariffs will do to the economy. But while you've seen Trump fighting for tariffs, you haven't seen that before no one was fighting for us at all on the global scale.
That's right. All on the global scale. Trump's fighting for us. Now, yesterday afternoon, the president gathered with a bunch of business leaders to discuss the economy and how he plans to build America into an even bigger economic powerhouse. And the subject came up there as well, as you can imagine. Listen.
A lot of investment coming into our country, much more than I've ever seen. Apple is investing $500 billion. IBM was with us yesterday, and they're investing a lot. Just companies all over. I could name them. You've read most of them, many of them. But hundreds of billions of dollars is being invested. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't win the election, number one. And I think, number two, the tariffs are having a tremendously positive impact. They will have, and they are having. We have car companies that are not building in Mexico now. They're building in the United States. Some of them, the plants were already started, and they stopped construction. And now they're going to build in the United States. It was very unfair. They'd build in Mexico and sell them across the border with no tax, no nothing. They'd take away our jobs. They'd close up places in Michigan and all over the country, and they'd build them in Mexico. In many cases, they were owned by China. Built in Mexico, owned by China. And that's all stopped now. They're all coming here.
They're all coming here. You see, it's all about the economy, and America's been getting ripped off by politicians and a lot of other people and countries for a long time. I'm proud to see President Trump saying, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to make sure this country is first in line always. And when we are, then we'll consider looking at how we can help other folks. But until we're back in line permanently in first place, those things are going to have to wait. They're going to have to wait. Here's more. Listen.
Honda is building a massive plant in different places, Indiana, South Carolina, but also in Michigan, a lot in Michigan. A lot of activity is happening. They're looking all over the place for places, and that's because there is a good spirit, there's a renewed spirit, and also, very importantly, the tariffs are, they don't want to pay 25% or whatever it may be. It may go up higher, maybe go up higher. Look, the higher it goes, the more likely it is they're going to build. And ultimately, the biggest win is not the tariff. That's a big win. That's a lot of money. But the biggest win is if they move into our country and produce jobs. That's a bigger win than the tariffs themselves. But the tariffs are going to be throwing off a lot of money to this country. And we've been ripped off for years by other countries, many, many decades. And they were doing the same thing. But I think we'll do it better. And I think we have a bigger advantage because we really are the piggy bank. They weren't.
Oh, yes. We're going forward. You know, and it's not just about the jobs and the economy and bringing people in. That's important. Very important. But Donald Trump's success is also about the people he's put on his team. This is not 2017, that's for sure. President Trump came in with something you cannot fake. Experience. And he selected people for his team for key positions that he knows well, and knows will do exactly what he wants and do it for the American people. It's called holding people accountable, and his team will be holding swamp creatures accountable for everything they do when they're out of sight. Be careful out there. I would suggest anyone thinking about playing games this time around, you might want to think twice. Here's why.
We have been utilizing polygraphs for 3 weeks now, and that we do have 2 DHS employees that are on administrative leave, and they're going to be facing consequences for what they've done to leak these operations. So they could face up to 10 years in federal prison for what they've done. And what they've done is by leaking the information on these ops is they put law enforcement lives in jeopardy. So we've got a lot of tools. I've got a lot of authorities under DHS. I'm going to use every single one of them to stop these leakers and make sure that they face significant consequences for what they're doing.
Yeah. And by the way, another thing, if you think you can stand there and throw stones at the people on his team, let me tell you something. They're ready for you. You see, they've seen this for years. And everyone on Trump's team is ready for the curveballs and the gotcha questions. They see them coming because, again, they've been seasoned to know they're coming, like Caroline Leavitt. Watch this.
You're welcome. If we could just step back for a second. When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs. And I'm curious why he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. And the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all 3 of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have. They don't get charged on foreign companies. They get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press.
I'm guessing she might not do that for a few days. And that brings me to the idea that the Democrats are going to shut down the government on Friday. I'll just say this. Good luck, Chuck. Good luck, Chuck. You go ahead, you do that. Let's see how that turns out for you. You see, the Democrats don't have any cards left. They don't. And everyone knows it, including them. Nice to see you today. Coming up after the break, Greenland held their country's parliamentary elections yesterday. I'll tell you all about it when we come back. It's good news again for guess who? Donald Trump. In a shock to some, but not to me, and certainly not to Donald Trump, Greenland's center-right opposition parties, two of them, won the general election victory yesterday in a vote overshadowed by Donald Trump's pledge to take over the autonomous nation. Jens Friedrich Nielsen and the Democratic Party, that's spelled with a K, by the way, which supports independence from Denmark, won nearly 30% of the vote compared to just 9% in the election 4 years ago. In fact, 4 years ago, it was the leftists that took 2/3 of the vote in Greenland. Now, 55% went to the right. It's a stunning change. Now, there's only 31 seats in Parliament, but it is a stunning change. Here with me to discuss this, former Ambassador Carla Sands. Carla, welcome to the program. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right, let's talk about this. I mean, this is no small thing. Donald Trump comes out and says, look, we need to control Greenland because it has strategic implications about its location. We have a military base there in the great far northwest. It has rare earth elements. It has an assortment of other natural resources. And the people of Greenland, well, they seem to be inclined to support that based on the vote I saw yesterday. What do you say?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, 84% of the Greenlanders, and that's an astounding figure, they support independence from Denmark. They don't want to be part of the Kingdom of Denmark anymore, 84%. And the party that was in power, a far left party, they wanted independence now. The party that won wants a sort of phased in independence, not an immediate independence. And I think that the Danish government is breathing a sigh of relief. But I also have to say, and warn, the world, Greenlanders haven't even heard the deal that President Trump will be offering them in order to help them be prosperous and actually be secure, which they are not now. They get about $600 million in wealth transfer, like welfare, from Denmark each year, but that's pretty much it.
Well, let's look at that. Just under 60,000 people. You were the ambassador there. You know it pretty well, obviously.
Yes.
Alaska has a permanent fund based on oil revenue from Prudhoe Bay coming south. They get about $1,800 a person in Alaska, man, woman, and child. That figure would be exponentially larger in Greenland if they take this deal. There's no question about exponentially larger because they have these natural resources. And look, if America has a tight relationship with them, there'll also be nice hotels there. I can go fly fishing for Atlantic salmon. It's going to be great fun for the boys and girls as well. I mean, there's going to be an influx of tourism and money and investment. I mean, these people are going to be literally wealthy if this happens, aren't they?
Yes, they will. And as a matter of fact, our great Alaskan governor, Governor Dunleavy, offered to show them how to create that sovereign wealth fund so that they don't have an explosion of wealth and then go bankrupt like so many third world countries do, where they have an explosion and then they sort of fritter the money away. To build generational wealth for Greenland is possible because they have oil and gas and they have the rare earth or critical minerals. And so they're poised to enjoy those and the explosion of tourism you're talking about, but only in cooperation with the U.S. Denmark doesn't have the money to develop Greenland. There's no road between even two towns. So there's a long way to go. And it would require some infrastructure and some investment by the U.S. and Greenland could actually experience their Greenlandic dream so that the majority of people in Greenland would really prosper and they'd also be more secure.
And no question. And look, we have a military base in the far northwest of Greenland currently, right? It's above the Arctic Circle. And this is critical because right now, Russia and China and the United States and others are jockeying for position in the Arctic for resources there. Look, China, we just talked about this in the break before you came on. China's planted its flag in South America and Central America and other places. We cannot afford to have China having any influence in Greenland or in the Arctic or elsewhere. We need to make sure that we protect our interests, and it starts with Greenland. I mean, it's incredibly important, isn't it?
It's incredibly important. And if you see what happened with Cuba, we don't want the same thing to happen to Greenland, this giant island just off our northeast coast. But you have to think about how the Chinese Communist Party looks at Greenland and the Arctic. They look at the world between the poles, the north and the south, the Arctic and the Antarctic. And there's a great book written by Anne-Marie Brady called China as a Polar Great Power. I recommend people read it if they want to learn more about this issue, because the CCP is attempting to control the globe through both poles. They really believe that's the power position. And the United States must win this war, but we must do it in a friendly way and not, I mean, you saw what USAID was doing around the world, destabilizing and really doing awful things. We want to do this in a virtuous way where we bring prosperity and security and maintain our great relationship with the Kingdom of Denmark. We've had diplomatic relations with them for 200 years. So we have to preserve our relationships, our friendships, and increase the security. President Trump is right when he says we have to do it for our security, but also for the world's security.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Let me ask you something. When you look at Greenland or Panama, which I'm going to guess we're going to have American flags at either end of that long ditch that Teddy Roosevelt masterminded and put together, I think you're going to find that America is reasserting itself on the global stage in a way it has not since probably Barack Obama took the White House in 2009. Donald Trump, he came back with experience in this second term in a way that is, you know, it's priceless because he knows what he's doing. He's surrounded himself with quality people. It's incredibly important, and they're effective people. So for anybody that would bet against Donald Trump, Madam Ambassador, what would you tell them today?
Well, first of all, I've been to the Panama Canal, and I saw all the Chinese signage. I watched the film. I visited the canal. I saw the ships. China was in control. So President Trump's move was correct. Don't underestimate President Trump. And I will just say to our allies, please work with President Trump. Work with him so that you secure your own borders, so you have cheap and abundant energy for your own companies and for your people, so that you take that oppression of the net zero pressure and ESG pressure off of them. And then you protect your citizens from these illegal invaders and from the sort of globalist mandate of reducing their quality of life.
Carlos Sands, greatly appreciate you being here, the former ambassador to Greenland and Denmark, who was, got a wealth of information about what's going on with the Chinese as well. Thank you. You come back anytime. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be here.
There you have it. All right, after the break, the House Republicans have passed a clean CR yesterday to continue government funding and avoid a shutdown through the 1st of October. Now it's on to the Senate. We'll talk about it up next on ABL. In a tight 217-213 vote, the Republican-led House passed a spending bill, stopgap bill, a continuing resolution yesterday aiming to prevent a government shutdown just ahead of the deadline. The bill extends federal funding through September 30th, featuring $13 billion in cuts to non-defense programs, a $6 billion boost for defense spending, and additional resources for border security. House Speaker Mike Johnson emphasized that the measure aligns with conservative priorities, curbing excessive spending, strengthening national defense, and securing the border. The bill will now head to the Senate where it's not certain it'll get through. Democrats may stand in the way. Good luck, Chuck. Joining me now to discuss this is the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union, Brandon Arnold. Brandon, nice to see you today. Look, Chuck Schumer, I think if they don't push this through, they do so at their own peril. I mean, there's discussion that they're just going to filibuster this thing. I don't think that plays well for the people. All they're trying to do is prevent Donald Trump from getting his agenda done. He will get it done, by the way. They will get the reconciliation bill through with most of his agenda in it. It's going to happen. They can't stop it. I'm sorry. But they can clog up the works from time to time. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, the odd thing, this is very unusual in Washington, is that Chuck Schumer has been relatively quiet. This is a man that will not stop talking, will not stop pontificating in front of television cameras. And to me, what that suggests is that he probably doesn't have his conference together in order to block this spending bill. So I think Republicans are going to prevail on this vote. We are going to get this continuing resolution to the president's desk. He will absolutely sign it. And that'll begin this very long fight to start trimming the size size and scope of the federal government. DOJ is doing some great work on that front. Now Congress is chipping in with this spending bill. There's a lot more work that needs to be done here, but this is the old classic case of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. This is one bite in the right direction for sure.
All right, so Thomas Massie, the one Republican that did not support this measure from Kentucky, Donald Trump says that they'll primary him out. Look, Massie says, I don't vote for continuing resolutions. Now, this is what you would call a clean resolution, Brandon. It's not 1,000 pages. It's not 10,000 pages. I think it's 98. The last number I heard, 98 pages, give or take. So there's not a lot in there. And it does pare down spending some, but it doesn't even begin to solve the problem of our overspending, does it?
No, we got a long way to go. But listen, we got a $2 trillion annual deficit. Basically, as far as the eye can see, we've got these multi-trillion dollar deficits. We have $36 trillion, more than $36 trillion on our national credit card right now. We can't fix this with a single bill. We're going to have to take multiple steps, small steps in the right direction before we're going to reach our goal. And I like Thomas Massie. His heart is in the right place. I wish he would have supported this bill. But you can only get so mad at somebody for wanting to make the government even smaller, and that is certainly his intention. He wants to make the government a lot smaller, so I'm with him in spirit, even though, again, I disagree with the way he cast his vote yesterday.
Well, he wasn't the only one from Kentucky saying, I'm not on board with that. Rand Paul says he may not be on board with this either. So if that's true, Republicans only have 53 votes to begin with. To get past the filibuster, they've got to have 60. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think that the Democrats are willing to shut down the government. Something they always say they won't do when roles are reversed, but here we are. I think they'll do it for politics. I think they'll do anything for politics, actually. Brandon, what do you think?
I think they're going to gnash their teeth, and I think we're going to have the 8 or 9 Democrats that we need vote for this thing to get it to the president's desk. As much as they hate casting that vote, what they care about a lot more is their beloved federal government and shutting it down, especially after all of the layoffs that have happened, all the cuts that are taking place thanks to DOJ. I don't think they want to have their federal employees, all their brethren, suffer even more by shutting down the federal government. So I do think they're going to muster together those 8 votes. I could be wrong, but I think they are going to produce those votes because they know that they will be responsible for a government shutdown, which, as you said, they have said many, many times in the past. They do not want that blood on their hands.
Last thing for you here today, Brand, what do you want to see when we get to the reconciliation bill? You want permanent tax cuts? You want spending cuts? You want it all? What do you want to see? What's a priority to you?
I'm greedy. I want it all. I think we can reduce the size of the federal government and lock in those Trump tax cuts from 2017 on a permanent basis. There's no reason why we can't walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. And in fact, I think if we're going to get those tax cuts, it is absolutely imperative that we simultaneously get those spending cuts because we need to be responsible with regard to the red ink that we've amassed. We need to start driving down the deficit, adding to it. So growth is part of that, which comes from the tax cuts, but so too is fiscal discipline, which means a lot in the way of spending cuts.
Brandon, greatly appreciate you being here, sir. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now, you don't go out and buy a jacket, a life jacket, that is, when the boat's already sinking, and you don't buy gold when the economy has already collapsed. Clearly, others are heeding this advice as gold hit all-time highs for the first part of 2025, still at almost $3,000 an ounce. It's not too late for you to get in. The company I trust to help diversify into physical gold is Birch Gold. The company I buy my gold from, Birch Gold, specializes in helping you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold for no money out of pocket. Just listen to this 5-star review. Knowledgeable, helpful, non-pressure. Well, that's what you get when you go with Birch Gold. That's why I've endorsed them for so long. Get your free information kit on gold by texting the word America to the number 989898. There is no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating at the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, text America to 989898. Let the experts at Birch Gold help you secure your future today with gold. Coming up after the break, young female conservatives are becoming more and more of a norm as more women push back against far leftist crazy narratives. Why is that happening? We'll talk about it up next. Well, young conservative women are pushing back against the far-left feminist narratives promoted by popular culture, celebrities, mainstream media, and, of course, the educational system. We seek alternative perspectives on culture, fashion, lifestyle, ones that align with our values rather than the dominant leftist ideology. That's why influencers like Brett Cooper and Riley Gaines have resonated with young women everywhere, like my daughter, for example. Joining me now to discuss this, a campus reform reporter and student at the University of Florida, Emily Sturge. Emily, nice to see you. You just told me in the break, a lot more conservative women than there were a couple of years ago. Why do you think that is? What's happening?
You know, young women in my generation are absolutely sick of the narrative that the left is trying to push on us. They are trying to erase womanhood. There's no longer such things, you know, as a mother, the left says that we need to use terms like inseminated person. I mean, how gross does that sound? And then also at the Leadership Institute's campus reform, we've reported how the left is taking over women's spaces like bathrooms, locker rooms, private spaces, sports teams. The left has taken women's trophies, women's scholarships, and handed them to biological men, all while allowing dangerous illegal immigrants into our communities, taking the life of Lake and Riley and creating a generation of women who are fearful to run on their college campuses. These are all attacks on womanhood, which is why so many young women in my generation are standing up and saying that we need to put a stop to this nonsense.
You know, my daughter was pushed over the edge. She was a little bit to the left, and she's come all the way back to the right because of this idea that men can be women and men can experience womanhood and all that. And she said, you know what, I'm not in that. She goes, color me gone. And she left all that nonsense. And so that's reflected. She's a little bit younger than you are. But so I see hope insofar as I see this younger generation, your generation, being more conservative, more love America more involved with work and paying attention and doing the things that it takes to become successful, work hard, love this country, and understand that there are men and women. I mean, it's pretty simple stuff, Emily.
It is simple, and the young women in my generation are embracing values of the American dream, of family, of faith. And I want you to take a second and put yourself in the shoes of young women for just a second and think about the female figures in society that the left tells us to idolize. That's people like Taylor Swift, Kim Kardashian, AOC, Kamala Harris. These women, in my view, are not positive role models. They don't align with my values. And in a society full of Kardashians, I'd much rather be a Pam Bondi or a Caroline Leavitt. And that's why young conservative women are looking toward alternative sources, alternative celebrities, if you will, and looking to influencers like Riley Gaines, who's fighting for women's sports, or looking toward YouTube personality Brett Cooper to talk about issues in society from a conservative perspective that we align more with.
You know, and one more thing that I've seen from women, and that's this move towards gun ownership. There's nothing more conservative, I don't think, than gun ownership. And I see young women across this country saying, look, I'm going to equalize things. More concealed carry permits going to women where I am, for sure. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing in Florida, but I mean, it is a move of young women to say, you know what, I'm going to defend myself. And this whole idea that it's just an old white guy thing to have guns, it's just not true, is it?
Well, I'm so excited to hear that. And, you know, as somebody who values women's safety myself, and I do conceal carry because that's something that matters to me. And I'm very excited to see women in my generation embracing that idea. I'm also excited to see the Trump administration really prioritizing women's safety. I would say that the Trump administration has been the most pro-woman administration in modern history, focusing on issues like illegal immigration, like women's sports teams, women's private spaces. And, you know, I've got my pink on today, but we saw those House or those Democrats at Trump's speech, his address to the joint session of Congress last week. Those Democratic women were wearing their pink, saying that they were standing in solidarity with women, but they weren't. They can't even describe what a woman is. And that's what the left has become. So it's exciting to see the right really shift toward women's safety, whether that's through concealed carrying or standing up against illegal immigration.
Last thing here, still disappointing, though. Some states, Michigan and Maine, defying the federal law now and allowing men to continue to participate in women's sports, at least at the high school level. The NCAA issued a different directive, but, I mean, that's still a bit disappointing. There's more work to be done, isn't there?
There is more work to be done, but latest developments do show that the Trump administration has cut off funding to universities in Maine. The Trump administration has delivered those promises. Maine was going against federal policies of protecting women's sports and was allowing biological men to compete against women, handing trophies, handing scholarships to men instead of the women that they belong to. Trump called this out in front of everybody. Trump said it to the Maine governor's face, called her out on it, said that we will cut your funding. And the administration has delivered on that promise very swiftly.
Emily Sturge, always appreciate talking to you, young lady. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Greatly appreciate it. Yeah. Women, they are a political force. Young women are a political force, no question. Don't go anywhere. America's Voice Live will continue after the break. Everyone's favorite time of the year. That's right, tax season. It's imperative that you protect yourself and your family from the IRS if you owe any back taxes or haven't filed yet. Be prepared. That's why here at Real America's Voice, we recommend going to the experts at Tax Network USA with all of your tax needs. They've helped their clients save over $1 billion in tax debt. They can help you as well. Here with me to discuss more about their services at Tax Network USA, spokesperson Cameron Kinsey. Cameron, nice to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're not very far away now, less than a month now, I guess, until it's payday for the United States government, and a lot of folks get to pay up. Now, tell me a bit about Tax Network USA, what services you offer.
Yeah, so Tax Network USA, we're just a team of experienced tax professionals. We have CPAs, enrolled agents, we have tax attorneys who really just specialize in helping individuals like the people watching our show today and businesses involved to resolve IRS issues, state tax issues, things like that. We handle everything from tax relief and the IRS negotiation, basically acting as a liaison between you and the IRS so you don't have to deal with them yourself, to audit defense, tax preparation, things like that. So our mission is to protect hardworking Americans from aggressive IRS overreach and get the best possible outcome for you.
Let's explore that a little bit. Explain, if you would, for the folks, how your tax preparation services work. What kind of clients do you work with, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, it's a streamlined process. I mean, we start with a full financial review just to ensure our clients take advantage of every deduction, every credit that's available. And then from there, our team prepares and files their returns accurately and on time, just making sure they're staying compliant. They don't trigger any red flags with the IRS. So unlike basic tax prep services, we offer a year-round support, helping clients plan strategically to minimize their tax burden and avoid future issues. We work with, just a plethora of people, everyday Americans, W-2 employees, business owners, self-employed individuals, retirees who really just found themselves in trouble with the IRS, not really sure where to start. We've kind of seen every single case in the book. So whether somebody owes back taxes, is facing an audit, simply needs expert guidance, Tax Network USA is here to help.
A lot of people just lose sleep over this. They don't sleep at night. They avoid the mailbox. They avoid answering those letters that come from the IRS. They just kind of try to pretend that it doesn't exist. So I guess my question is, what advice would you give to someone who's struggling with all that pressure, all that anxiety, and struggling with tax debt?
Yeah, I mean, first off, just don't ignore the problem. I think the worst thing you can do in this situation is avoid the IRS letters, because the penalties and the interest can stack up quickly. But, instead taking action immediately, knowing that these problems can be resolved. Again, we've seen everything in the book, and just know that you're really not alone in this. The IRS is not going to go away magically, unfortunately, but you do have rights. So there are legal options for you to reduce or even eliminate your tax debt in this situation. And then that's really where we come in. So our team will fight to negotiate settlements for you, stop wage garnishments, lift bank levies, often really just reducing what people owe significantly. But timing is everything. And as tax season is approaching, it's better to get in front of the situation.
Right. All right. So how long does this process typically take? You have a consultation, obviously. You figure out if it's a good fit. How do you get from consultation to resolution of tax issues?
Yeah, well, I think it really just depends on the complexity of the case, Steve. I mean, some issues like penalty abatement or setting up an installment agreement, it could take, several weeks. More complicated cases such as offers and compromise or IRS appeals, maybe that could take a couple weeks to a couple months just due to the government's processing times. However, from the moment we step in, we handle all communication with the IRS, so our clients don't have to deal with the stress of collecting calls, letters, things like that.
All right, give me one example or two. Just give me an example of some success you've had there at Tax Network USA.
Yeah, we've helped clients settle six-figure tax debts for just a fraction of what they owed. I actually said this recently. One recent case involved a business owner who was drowning in $300,000 of tax debt due to payroll tax issues. The IRS was on the verge of shutting down his company. Our team negotiated an offer in compromise. He ended up settling for just over $20,000. We had another case that involved a single mom who had her wages garnished over a tax bill she didn't even know that she had, actually. And that's really where we stepped in, got the garnishment released, negotiated a fair resolution with the IRS. So every case is different that we deal with. Really just the key is knowing the system, fighting for every single legal advantage. And it's just really better having the experts in your corner who are willing to negotiate on your behalf.
And there you go. All right. Cameron Kinsey, greatly appreciate you being here. Tax day is not far away. Cameron, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thanks for having me.
And if you have a question, don't wait. Go to tnusa.com right now or call 1-800-905-8000, tnusa.com, or call 1-800-905-8000. Look, you don't need that kind of pressure. Make the phone call. Get that tax monkey off your back. After the break, we'll have a story that reminds us of just how wonderful America is, plus answers to our America's Voice question of the day. What are your thoughts on Greenland's election? Do you think that they will join the United States? We'll have your answers, America, in just a moment. Every day we do it here. What makes America wonderful? Why? I want you to leave with a smile on your face. That's why. We do it every day because we need that smile when you leave here, and that's kind of one of the things I get done. A simple act of kindness from a Georgetown police officer resonating far beyond his local community thanks to a touching video shared on social media. Officer Rodney Johnson was on routine patrol Friday when he noticed traffic slowing on Paris Pike. Curious, he investigated and found a woman in a wheelchair struggling to make her way home. Without a second thought, he parked his cruiser, turned on his lights, and stepped in, carefully guiding her down the street as traffic patiently waited. For Johnson, it was just another day to dedicated service in his community. Now, the video has since garnered over 1,300 views, and it's exploding, with many praising Officer Johnson for his compassionate act, as they should. The Georgetown Police Department commended Johnson's actions, calling them a true example of going above and beyond. His kindness is a powerful reminder that doing the right thing, even when no one's watching, can have a lasting impact. What makes America wonderful? Our great men and women in law enforcement, among other things, who spend their days continuing to help Americans, ordinary Americans, make this country a little bit nicer, a little bit safer, and a little bit friendlier, I guess. All right, your question of the day is this. What are your thoughts on Greenland's election? Do you think the United States, that they'll join us? What do you think? David Bazidlo. My thoughts, all things are possible with President Trump leading the way. I wouldn't bet against him, that's for sure. Eddie Johnson writes, no, but will provide protection, right? And with that, Eddie, will come great opportunity for the Greenlandiers. Is it Greenlanders or Greenlandiers? We're going to have to sort that out. Scott T. Seth. Better us than worthless China. Well, yeah, there's a lot more to it than that. CB Layer 75 Oldham. I hope so. That would mean a big strategic gain for the U.S. It certainly would. Love Freedom Now writes, I hope so. A win is a win. Yeah, it sure is. Johnny Bravo 56. Population of 56,000. And yes, they want to join the MAGA movement and become patriots. Well, would you blame them? Mr. Griff writes, I think they will become a territory. Territory, not a state. That's probably about right. 56,000, not enough for a state, that's for sure. As a territory, not a state, says Gina Marie, 0630. Same thing. What do you guys think? A territory, not a state. Mark Kenny writes, that would be a great move, but the American Communist Party is going to do everything they can to stop it. Goes against the New World Order and the CCP, you know. I don't disagree. Let's leave it right there for today. Always appreciate you checking in. We read your answers here. You can find the questions on my Twitter page, X if you prefer. So be sure to go there. Follow me. Same on Facebook. We post these questions every day to my Facebook page and my Twitter page, at Steve Gruber Show. You can find it there every day. Don't forget to join me, speaking of that, to start your broadcast day every day here on Real America's Voice at 6 a.m. I'll get you started with a hot cup of coffee and a hot conversation about all the things happening in the world, in this Trump effect world we live in. And I'll see you back here for America's Voice Live tomorrow.